Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Carnegie, for this wonderful forum every year. Really appreciate all of the effort that goes into getting it set up. And thank you, everybody, for taking the time to hear all of us speak on this very interesting and I think very timely topic. So just as a quick introduction, I think our panelists, most of them require no introduction, and I'll let each person give a short brief on their backgrounds. But to start and frame the theme of this conversation, I think this year has been a very interesting inflection point when it comes to AI. Two things: the annual AI Action Summit in Paris, where we saw this more open call from regulators. We've seen the US have a certain stance about AI. We're also seeing that a lot of large conglomerates are the ones creating the rule book for how AI proliferation is going to happen. And then we saw the rest of the world band together to say that we need to democratize access to technology, because the implications of AI for the more marginalized parts of our community are immense. Right? We've seen that in India when it comes to technology, the adoption of technology like we've seen in DPI. Right? So how do we ensure that technology and its benefits are made available to the most marginalized sections of our societies to uplift them? The second inflection point, I think, came at Davos when DeepSeek was formally announced. And it took the entire world by storm. I think it wiped out a couple of $1 trillion of market cap of listed companies overnight. So with those two framing conversations, I'd like to take a moment to introduce my panel. So we've got with us the ex-National Security Advisor of, the ex-Deputy National Security Advisor of India. We've got one of our phenomenal and foremost military leaders. We have representation from the Global South, from big US conglomerates, and from the Indian developer community that's working on getting targeted innovation out to the masses in the form which we require for social upliftment. So with that, I'd like to start with Mihir. If you could take a minute to just introduce yourself, but then also to give a little bit of context and framing for the way you'd like to see the next 45 minutes of the discussion play out.
Sure. Thank you, Carnegie, firstly, for having me here. And yeah, my name is Mihir. I am from Vadhwani AI. We build AI solutions for people who have been traditionally underserved by these great technologies out there. Anything from building solutions for farmers, for healthcare, all these different domains. For the past 2 years, I've been surrounded with these LLM models, all these big names that you see, and trying to use them to build solutions and get them in the hands of users, including all these provisions and regulations around how to get them behave as you expect them to behave. So about DeepSeek, as a developer, we have seen so much frustration, honestly, in the sense that sometimes you're not allowed to use these models. Sometimes you want to use these models, but there are GPU problems, the compute issues, infrastructure not being available. Along with that, what I've seen is these new kinds of models have started bringing up questions that even developers didn't think about. For example, originally you would think the models might mess up, or maybe they may not give the right output or the right answer you are looking for because their training data was bad. But now you're also kind of looking at whether these models themselves have been trained with an agenda, let's say. We don't know whether that's true or not, but that kind of brings up that question, and it forces you to think about how to account for that while also innovating at the top. So that is what I would like this discussion to also kind of touch upon.
Hello, everyone. Amith Singhee. I'm Director of IBM Research and also CTO of IBM India. I lead a team of really passionate researchers who are working in the areas of AI, quantum, and semiconductors. Of course, from an IBM lens, for those who don't know much about IBM, we are really an enterprise IT company. We provide technology, infrastructure, technology, software, and consulting to the big enterprises of the world and governments of the world. So the lens we apply to it is what the lens our clients apply, which is, they're looking for, of course, all the benefits that generative AI promises, but to do it in a trusted way within the enterprise setting, which can be scaled up, which is a little different than the consumer setting that we often see out there. And so bringing the AI to the data, having the ability to work with small purpose-built models that give you the maximum ROI, give you the control you need, being able to ground it into your enterprise context is all extremely important to our clients and to IBM. And so DeepSeek was, sort of like a validation, I would say, more than anything, and more than a surprise to us, that you don't necessarily need that $1 billion to build a model. You actually can build these purpose-built things, and if you get the engineering right, you can make it happen. So looking forward to the conversation more.
Thank you very much. Does it work? It works? Okay. Can you hear me? Oh, yeah, now it works. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Shikoh Gitau. I'm the CEO of Kala. Kala is a digital innovation lab. We are headquartered in Nairobi and in DC. And we are ecosystem enabler for Africa's digital future. Our goal is to catalyze Africa's digital future. We do this in a number of ways. We do research, we build, we have a proper research, an AI research lab where we have researchers building and thinking what's next. We are working very closely in the policy space. Last week, we had the Global AI Summit on Africa, which was extremely successful. I'm really excited about that. We got to launch the AI Council for Africa, the AI Governance Toolkit for Africa, and a Talent Index for Africa. Just items to show where Africa is, to benchmark where Africa is. So I'm really excited about the work that we do. And why DeepSeek? I mean, DeepSeek was announced maybe a week before Davos, and then I went to Davos, everybody's speaking about about DeepSeek. It basically took over all the conversations. And the week after, we had a conversation amongst African players who are looking at how do we make AI work for the continent. I've been working in this space for a long, long time. And the one thing that constantly is thrown on my face is Africa cannot afford AI. Yeah? Because we don't have enough money for compute, we don't have enough talent, we don't have, our data sets are not digitized. And I'm a believer, I'm an optimist. How do we make this happen? And for me, DeepSeek was that aha moment, that you can do it with no resources at all. And I love the title. I didn't know what the motto of the session, this conference, Samban. I was told it's looking at the possibilities. And then I called it hope. And that's what DeepSeek actually gave to Africa. It allowed us to have hope that we can do it. And after that, the conversation around AI in Africa totally changed, totally honest. Like even the engineers in my team have been reading these papers and trying to see how can we build foundational models. The hope started happening. And for me, that is what I want to instill, even given the motto of this particular summit, is that you do not need. I saw today Milty, the former founder of OpenAI, is raising $2 billion. Don't need $2 billion, just need a couple of millions to be able to do this thing.
So I'm General Shukla, and by way of opening remarks, let me make 2 to 3 points. One is, let me try and outline my understanding of what the strategic contest is, the geopolitical drivers between DeepSeek's open source AI revolution and Silicon Valley's closed garden model. So that's the first thing. The second thing, in the Indian context, let me echo J.D. Vance at the Paris summit, where he said, I'm not here to talk about AI safety. I'm here to talk about the AI opportunity. So I believe, it's not that all concerns about AI must be thrown out of the window, but in the Indian context, we need innovation to be prioritized over regulation. Because if we don't do it, you just see how regulation will take over. So I'm personally, I really push for innovation to build the most powerful AI systems, Indian design, possibly with Indian manufactured chips. I know it's a tall order in Indic languages, but that's the point I would like to make. Exploit the opportunity full hog. And the third point really is that the challenge is not merely AI innovation, but it is also AI diffusion. How this technology proliferates, democratizes, and induction is in speed and in scale. not as an esoteric technology, but as a utilitarian tool of everyday use. So the first point about the geopolitical contest, let me say this, that now that DeepSeek open sourced AI models seem to be becoming as powerful as the proprietary American models, the challenge is this, that will the American models have the ability to monetize the technology as an exclusive product, or will it collapse? That is the first challenge. And this DeepSeek is remarkable for more than one reason. Firstly, the CEO of DeepSeek, he takes sustainable funding from its parent company, the Chinese hedge fund. So without any profitability pressures, he works on it for a while. Now it could be even state funding, knowing the Chinese, but he was allowed to work on this without any profitability pressures, allowing DeepSeek to focus on fundamental research. And of late, if you've seen, Alibaba, Baidu, Tencent have been flooding the market with powerful AI models in business and commerce. So you have research being complemented by business and commerce. So to me, it appears there is deep strategy behind it. Jack Ma comes back from the oblivion riding on AI. His QN is challenging DeepSeek. So this complementarity is amazing. The QWB32B model of Jack Ma rivals DeepSeek's R1 reasoning models. So what is actually happening that, in my view, this model is extremely startup friendly. And we know what the Americans do. I mean, Rudra was saying, that the PLA is into it. Oh, PLA is into chips, into ship building, into DeepSeek. Out of the 211 authors of DeepSeek, 30 are from the PLA. That shouldn't surprise us any longer. But see, what is it doing and what are the Chinese doing? This is what we have to see with our startups. They not only give the startups the first orders, they hold their hand till commercial viability, if necessary, hold their hands to destroy adversary competition. So for them, it is strategic. So that's one point, and it seems to be working well, because you now have startups and researchers who are building upon these sophisticated AI technologies without massive capital expenditure. So it seems to be a very smart model. It's accelerated China's AI capabilities. And what they are doing now, every week you see the number of models that are being churned out by DeepSeek. It's not only, it's now in the reasoning series and so on and so forth. So speed and scale flood the market, shift the balance before the American monopolies take over. So to me, it appears there's deep thinking about this. This DeepSeek's V3 model, it runs on these 20 tokens per second on a Mac laptop, $10,000, which means it is attempting a major departure from data center requirements. So to me, it appears very sophisticated. The stealth launch strategy disrupts AI market expectations. And in the long term, Jake Sullivan said small yard, high fence, which means niche technologies will be kept with a few. The Chinese are saying small yard, big world. And how are they doing it? They are giving you this low-cost AI and with capabilities distributed more widely. So the strategy is accelerate AI adoption at home, share the technology more freely with the global south, and therefore wield greater influence over how AI reshapes the world. Now, whether it works or not, the Americans may, the Americans are no pushovers. It's going to be a huge contest and a big challenge. But I marvel at the deep thinking behind DeepSeek. It's just that it didn't, suddenly come up. It's this research, business, commerce. And just one last point, what is truly remarkable about this? Somebody said it's 1/20th of the cost. The R1 model, when you compare it with open AI models, O1, it is 5% of cost. And not only on rationed, old-fashioned GPUs, but the talent piece is what should worry us, because that drives algorithmic innovation. And as I said, of the 211 authors, 60% haven't stepped out of China. So the bright and the best and the bright, what is that, best and the brightest are at home. They have not American university returnees. And it was Vrinda who forwarded one paper to me. It's not only here, look at the Fantastic Four, they call them. So the CEO of DeepSeek, CEO of Unitary Robotics, CEO of ByteDance, CEO of DJI, all have been educated in China. Now for us, the challenge is what? I don't know how we'll work on 10,000 GPUs because Elon Musk's Colossus is 1 million GPUs. And he talks of 1 million GPUs so either you push the money, and if it is the talent, I wonder if Anirudh Suri is here. He's written a wonderful paper in Carnegie where he says one of the missing pieces is talent. So we have to either get behind talent or behind the money. That really is the big challenge. If I may make just one last point, about this diffusion. So the true winner of the AI race will be, of course, the ones who innovate well, but also those who diffuse it well, which means the country where government, businesses, and ordinary people use AI at scale every day, what I think the Niti Aayog calls AI for all. But AI for all needs to be infused with AI competitiveness. And it's in AI competitiveness that we lack. And just look at the last point, or just 2 quick points. Look at the brute force of finance. So Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, and Meta this year, $300 billion. Alibaba, Baidu, ByteDance, Tencent, $50 billion. So with all what the Chinese do, it may be $100 billion. But they are working on talent and their innovation. Indian AI mission, $1.3 billion. I'm not demeaning it, but we have to step up the game. Otherwise, how is it going to happen? And the last point, action. Pete Hegseth, 3 months back, takes over and says, no more talk. So picks up 2 commands, Eurocommand, IPACOM, AI enablement of fleets and formations. So LLMs have been given to Microsoft. None of this L1 Jhagada and all that which goes on in our case. AI agents and Dural. And definite combat objectives, enhance lethality, mission readiness in terms of precision strike, OODA loop, and shrinking target engagement cycles. So look at what the world is doing. It's no longer talking. It's action. And here is so in sum, I would say this is once again a great opportunity. We are not very much there. It's a great challenge, but we have to really step up our game in light. We can adopt either model, DeepSeek or the other model, but get cracking. So innovation over regulation, please, because I know my country very well.
Thank you, sir. With that, over to you.
Thank you, Vrinda. Thank you for inviting me to this very important summit. Now, I must admit that till a few days ago, I had no knowledge about what DeepSeek means. Though I like the word DeepSeek because it's a very Vedantic concept that you seek within and deep. And I think that's what India should be doing. It may not have a DeepSeek model, but this is an opportunity to seek deep and see where we are. Now, one point that I wanted to understand, which I think I have understood, is that how DeepSeek differs from the LLMs is that it does away with the human supervision in terms of validating the models in the post-training phase. Now, many people have said that DeepSeek is $6 million and it is, it's an alternative to LLMs, etc. I think that's wrong. LLMs are still needed. If you don't have an LLM, then how are you going to train it for reasoning, for analytical purposes, etc.? So I think this thing about that LLMs are not necessary or have become less important is probably wrong. And also, I think this 6 million, that very little investment was required, etc., that is also wrong, because that was probably the last bit of the development of DeepSeek, because before that, they had developed what is it called, V3 or something, which is an LLM, which required a huge computing power and which they had developed. It's only the last bit that computers were used for supervising and fine-tuning. That is where I think they made some saving. So let's not get away from the fact that big money will not be required. Having said that, of course, now it's open source, as it was said earlier, that the small developers, etc., can use it. But then some problems were pointed out, whether whether there'll be bias, whether that's accurate or no, and DeepSeek is still developing. It's okay in some code writing or in some mathematical things, but I think it will complement the LLMs and it will not replace them. So you'll require both. So let's not kid ourselves that less money will be required. Huge amount of money will be required, and billions of dollars, as was pointed out. The Americans are putting billions of dollars, and so are the Chinese. And the race in AI is only starting. It is not ending. In fact, probably Americans have an edge in this whole game because they still have the computing power, which the Chinese are still lacking. And it's also mentioned, and I think there is some truth in that, that the Chinese DeepSeek was built on chips, degraded chips, what is called H800, which is a degraded version of H100, which were made specially and smuggled into China and exported to China in 23 or so to circumvent those export controls, and they used those. They were still powerful, they were slightly degraded because the settings, etc., were a little different. So the chips will be required. And there was about 6 billion worth of chips that were imported or smuggled or whatever into China during the 22-23, circumventing the export controls. So it's a traditional thing. As we saw in the nuclear arms race, proliferation was happening, and NVIDIA is going to get into trouble because of this. But the point is that Americans still have an edge because they have the computing power. You are not getting away from computing. As far as the AI mission is concerned, India's AI mission, I think it is a good beginning, but it is anemic. 10,000 crores, 11,000 crores starting a few years ago has not happened. We cannot get away from the fact that we need not one, but several LLM models, and the DeepSeek kind of models are, startups, etc., looking at solutions and applications, but at the same time, computing power. Where is that computing power? Our minister has said that we will get 18,000 GPUs, but 18,000? Excuse me, 18,000 is not enough. Probably it has not come. And where are you going to get it from? They have said some 10 companies. I think some of those 10 companies were in some consumer things, etc. So some people have gone and bid, we'll supply you so many GPUs, 10,000 GPUs. I don't know, maybe your semiconductor mission needs to be upgraded. My final point, please develop your AI the way you do it, but please get the defense and security into it. Otherwise, you are lost the AI race. You are lost the AI race because AI race has a huge, huge implications, probably more worse than that, the nuclear implications, and you are losing it. So I think it's time to smell coffee. It's outside there. And you please rework your AI mission. Rework your AI mission, and there can be many things we can probably discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, all of our speakers, for really riveting comments. I'd really like to start back with you, Mihir. So you guys have done a lot of work to drive AI for social good, right? Agriculture, healthcare, like we were saying earlier, the most marginalized sections of our society. Now, 3 points I want you to make. One is infrastructure, right? What is it going to take for you guys to unlock the kind of infrastructure barriers that are necessary in order to actually get to the kind of scaled adoption that we need? So that's the first. The second question I have is impact. What do we need to see in terms of impact, right? Does that mean that there is an improvement in farmer livelihood? Does that mean that there is an improvement in patient healthcare cycles? And the third thing I think we need to address, and let's do it all in a quick minute, is the ethical issues. And I think the ethical issue that you raised is the most important. Everything else, patient data, et cetera, is a secondary issue. But the ethical issue is how do we trust foreign models that could be trained with certain biases in mind? Over to you.
Okay, sure. I'll take up the infrastructure point first. So I believe we talk about a lot of upskilling as a topic quite a lot. And that upskilling doesn't only need to happen to the talent that is there in the country, but actually to the users. We don't really see how I would say, the users are not used to these kinds of technologies. You put an AI system in the hands of farmers, they will either not understand the capabilities that well, or they'll think of it as some supercomputer or some godlike thing which can answer anything the farmer can pose. Any other community can follow similarly. So I believe in terms of the infrastructure, why I'm bringing up the upskilling point is that if you don't have the users educated and using the models as they're supposed to, it's really difficult to actually use these models efficiently and make it worth the cost. So even if I take the smallest of compute and put the smallest of the models out there, I won't really make that much value out of it when compared to, let's say, an OpenAI or a Gemini call, which charges me per use. So if I make a single question to that model, I'm just being charged a fraction of cents. So I believe the infrastructure point really needs to look into the part of bringing up use cases and then educating the users to get those use cases become viable. What was the second question? Sorry, I missed.
So the second, I think the more important question is trust, right? The ethical issue on biases, inbuilt biases into models.
Right, okay. I think one of the most important roles that now engineers would play, AI engineers, software engineers, everything, is to understand that they are not just developing code, they are not just building something for the objective of following the issue, but also being cognizant of the fact that these biases can exist, and then ensuring that these steps get the time that it requires. As developers, you kind of just get something to be done, and you do it, and you think it's over with. So you want to just quickly get things out there, you're done with the job, and that's about it. But at this point, I feel that is what every developer out there needs to focus on, is you're using models which are going to be relied upon by the users. So it's kind of your job has kind of upgraded to account for these regulations, because in the end, there is no evaluation in these models which are so specific to your use case. So it's up to the developers to actually do something about it.
Amith, that takes me to my second question, which is to you. I think you made some very interesting comments in your introduction on DeepSeek being sort of Hail Mary, where you could see efficiency along with performance, right? What importance do these kinds of models play in ensuring a more accessible and transparent AI future?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's all interlinked. We're talking a lot about DeepSeek. In the world of AI, actually, Mihir might agree, it's kind of old news now, because after that, a lot of more things have happened, we should take hope from what DeepSeek did, because they did this service of showing if you're rigorous about your engineering, if you are resourceful, you can do something that others haven't done. But then lots more people are continuing to do that. And so that's where the power of open and transparency comes in, because if we over-regulate, what will happen is we will constrain people from being open. But in this highly evolving field where 2 months and 3 months is old news, we need to be able to share a lot more. We need to be able to share our engineering practices. We need to be able to share the data that went in, right? So that's one thing that a lot of model developers don't do. Even if they put their model weights in the open, it won't be easy to go figure out what data actually went into the model. And we need to be able to share how we evaluated the model, what worked, what didn't work. Because only then will there be trust and transparency, and only then will we be able to move and develop AI both with the speed that's needed for benefiting our nation, but also with the understanding of how to use it without making things go wrong. So I think it's closely interconnected. We really believe that fostering an environment, especially in a country like India, where we have such a huge demand for AI, the potential is probably higher than any other country in the world. I think Nandan was making that case earlier too. But the challenges are also very unique because of the diversity and the data scarcity. We don't have just a few dialects of Chinese to deal with. We have thousands of dialects, right, if you look beyond the 22 languages. And it's just not dialects because of the social and economic strata. The same words being spoken in a hall versus out on the street, everything sounds different. And addressing that diversity challenge cannot be done just in a siloed approach. So I think an open approach and an ecosystem that encourages data providers, people who are collecting data, to be able to share it, encourages model developers to share their engineering and model best practices, creates qualification framework. One of the big needs we have in the country is if you look at all these benchmarks that are used, why did everyone get surprised by DeepSeek? Because it was doing really well on reasoning and math. Not many people might recognize that it actually started doing worse on language, because in trying to make reasoning really good, they actually lost some of those horizontal skills, which we showed later how to recover it from our work. But all of that is not relevant when you're going to the farmer. Like, what benchmarks will tell you that this voice bot that I'm going to do surveys, say Bangalore police wants to do a survey in Bangalore, how will they know that this is going to work in the field? None of those benchmarks, reasoning and math benchmarks, are going to do it. So they don't even know if I'm going to use DeepSeek and fine-tune it, is it even going to work? So I think the model is important, and compute and money, all that is important, I agree. But a much more holistic maturity about what it takes to build AI that's useful is even more important, because only then the money and the compute will be used effectively. Today, if you actually go and talk to a lot of the infrastructure providers who have actually procured GPUs in the hope of, most of those are underutilized. So we're not there to the 18,000 GPUs, we're at few thousand. Even those are not even being used. So I think we need to develop this broader understanding of how to make AI useful. That, again, back to your point, Vrinda, is going to come when we have an ecosystem that actually incentivizes open and collaborative development. So.
No, Amith, I think that's fantastic. And you're absolutely right. We need to take and I keep going back to the DPI example, because it took a whole of country approach, and that's what really lifted it up from just being technology to being technology that's benefiting people. And that, I think, segues me very well into the next question I have for Shikoh. I loved your point on how this was a moment of hope for Africa. Could you elaborate a little bit of the ground level implications of this development, DeepSeek being available to Africa, and especially in the construct of resource constraint, right?
Awesome, thank you. Can you hear me? So maybe I should just give you a few numbers. Yeah, I mean, earlier on you talked about only 1% of compute data centers being on the African continent. Let me bring it down. We only have one supercomputer on the African continent. That's 1.5 billion people. Yeah, and I hear he was talking about talent. We did a talent. I mentioned we did an AI talent index. And we did an AI talent evaluation from the globe. India is actually one of the biggest sources of talent to the US, and China, of course, but India is a big source of talent. Maybe that is a good incentive to get them back home. But in Africa, we only have Nigeria and Egypt that is producing talent, but it's also less than 1%. Yeah? So when you're given all these constraints, the one thing we don't have a challenge on is power, because you have lots of green energy. Kenya is more than 90% green energy, so is many of the other countries. So if we had compute, energy would not be a problem. So given these constraints, we have so many young people. We are a population of 1.5 billion, which in India is not a big number, but in 20 years, we'll be a population of 2.5 billion. That's a big number, right? We need to start being creative. And having been thrown at that you don't have enough money, are we going to prioritize feeding a child or buying compute is the question I got all the time when I said, let's invest on compute to get onto this AI conversation. What DeepSeek said is just we need to just double down on our talent. Our talent will hack the AI race. And that for me was the eye-opener, as he said, is that if you have people trained to think the right way, they will look at the problem given their constraints. And for me, when I look at the things that some of our developers are doing, they're doing exactly that. There's a lot of edge computing that is happening right now. We have a distributed computing for AI startups that are happening right now. So we have an experiment at work where we have 10 universities and startups, all of them combining their idle compute to create computing capability for people who are running models. That only comes, an innovation that comes from the constraints that we have. But what DeepSeek gave us is if I can go and hustle NVIDIA to give me a couple of GPUs, I can be able to cluster it in a way that people are able to use it and run it and be able to make a difference. But I want to double down on something that he said. So one of the biggest argument is, in this AI race, should we be running for the most powerful model? And DeepSeek told us no, yeah? Because they're churning out one every 3 days, yeah? There's a new, between Quen and DeepSeek, there's a model every 3 days that is coming out of China, which means that your powerful model means absolutely nothing. It's how powerful you're able to apply that model. And you have seen Google's narrative has stopped being, oh, we have the most powerful model, to we are applying our models to science research, to biological research. And you can start, the conversation is now changing. And that's why I love the theme of the Indian AI Summit to being AI Impact Summit, because now we are putting people to task in terms of like, okay, you have a model. What does it have to do with the price of coffee in Ghana? Can it change it? And that is what I love about what DeepSeek did to us. It disrupted our conversations and our focus to be on the right path towards humanity, as the minister said, to having a human-centered AI, not model-centered AI. Thank you.
I think that's fantastic, and I think we've heard that time and again from Prime Minister Modi in his comments in the public forum, that AI needs to be evolved, or we need to think about the human centricity of AI. We need to think, Amith, to your point about how the adoption of AI changes the ground reality of people and how the users are able to actually make the most of this opportunity, right? That's going to drive the entire ecosystem. So, General Shukla, that gets me back to a point. I think what China has done over the last decade, and I think we need to go way back to look at this, maybe 2 decades. Every series of big companies or large, let's call them national champions, that comes out of China, comes out in waves. And it's an ecosystem that's fostered together, right? So you saw this with Huawei, Hikvision, and OmniVision, right? You're seeing this now with Cambridge Technologies, DeepSeek, and others. But what's happening is that there is a huge amount, there's almost like a state-guided framework which is working in advance to create companies up to a certain level of, let's call it a national champion, and then unleashing them at strategically significant points in global competition. What do we need to do in India to create that kind of a vision apparatus?
I think what we need to do is just to get common sense back. No, and I'm making a very serious point, because unconsciously we go on creating these, whole procedures and all that other stuff. So I'm making this principal point, say at least in the national security space, MOD, you cannot innovate unless you deregulate. That's the first point. So I'll tell you what. After this controversy started, after Mr. Goyal's statement, I forget which, but there was one startup, I saw a tweet in a very niche technology. He said that, when I'm talking of this technologies which is not available in the world, I'm told go to GEM. And on GEM, you have to give the first certificate that this technology is not available anywhere. Now, that process itself takes 6 months. So it is this kind of stuff, and the major issue is this, that we have to realize that the DPP and the processes that we created were created for, a monopsony market. One buyer, one seller, no choices, that kind of stuff. So HAL, no competition. A very cozy stuff, but 6 decades down the line, you will not be able to make the engine. You need competition. So it is this. And this will certainly not work in what are called technology commercial markets. So today, say, some good examples of, say, Ukraine. You fire a drone on Friday, and they have learnt it the hard way, and you find it's missing the target. You want the rocket motor to be redesigned. You do it over the weekend, metaphorically, and with additive printing, you print it Monday, it's back in theater. So innovation, is giving you technological outcomes which are just pipping these procurement cycles. So first and foremost, you need this whole cultural change. Then the second is, I think somebody was mentioning that you have to just first get on with it. You will discover the advantages of it. For example, why do, we all know that World War II was won on the back of steel and aluminium. Today's conflicts will be won on the back of chips and GPUs. But why are the services not saying that we need 60,000 GPUs? I mean, a service chief says, I need so many gun platforms. He doesn't talk of GPUs. He doesn't talk of chips, because it is not in our mindset. But were we to see what is happening, so one more example. When Ukraine began, an artillery shoot was taking 30 to 40 minutes. Then as they got AI going, they have now 2 AI engineers per battalion. Today an artillery shoot with these, what they call localized AI killing machines, are taking 5 minutes. The Indian military hasn't seen this happen, so it is not making these calls. So, so we need these cultural changes. One last point. For years we've been talking of revenue capital. Why should the budget not be AI, quantum? The whole mindset has to change. If we do all these kind of things, we will find the necessary talent and all to do it. And this last point, we have to see, in these high-end technologies, there is, every startup is not talented. There are few startups who are. Now they have matured in your IDEX system. Please identify them, handhold them, like the Chinese have done, make your old models, take them to commercial viability. यहाँ एक बेचारा स्टार्टअप जिस पहली बार वो सक्सीड हो जाता है, उसको हम बोलते नहीं, आपको रिपीट ऑर्डर नहीं देंगे. It is all this is so silly. So you have to hold them and to destroy adversary competition. And let me make one last point. I'm writing a book on civil-military fusion. If there is one reason why China has beaten all democracies, including India, it's civil-military fusion. And 70 years we've wasted in civilian control of the military. So we have so many silos today that is very difficult to get them together.
So excellent points. And Gupta ji, that gets me to my last question to you. I think this is segued very well. We are in a technological arms race, right? It's as much of a national imperative as the nuclear arms race was. And I think that we as a country get caught in our own bureaucratic quagmire where we're not able to move far forward. We're seeing the openness of the, on one hand you see the strength of American capitalism. On one hand you see the outcomes of the Chinese autocracy. Where do we fit in our regulation and how do we come out of it?
So I think we seem to be falling between two stools. Neither are we able to bring in private capital, which is what is happening in America, nor are we able to get the government to invest so much and also get the private sector. So I think we have to find our own model, which probably we are still groping. So it's a wake-up call. If it's a wake-up call for Trump, this DeepSeek, and which is already an old news these days, then it is more so for India. I just want to take one point which you mentioned right in the beginning about this AI summit and so on. More of it is like, show, frankly. Today, you must ask yourself a question that the regulations that you are making for AI, are you a taker or a shaper? So you can keep shouting that, look, let us share data, let's share LLMs, etc. It's not going to happen unless you have your own capabilities. And I remind you of what happened during the COVID time. India and I think South Africa, Brazil, etc. went to WHO and this WIPO and so on, said, please make it available, this technology, vaccine. People are dying by the millions. It didn't happen. So do you think that by shouting hoarse that let us all share with the billions of dollars at stake, with AI race deepening, anybody is going to share? Yes, there will be some crumbs here and there. There will be some free model available. And the biggies will make some money out of it, but that is how they are going to control. So in India, you will see a lot of applications coming in. So Zomato, which is delivering in 10 minutes, probably will start doing it in 10 seconds. I don't know why, but they will do it in 10 seconds. But that is a kind of application that we are going for, whereas where we should be really putting, and agriculture was mentioned, health was mentioned, strategy, your defense and security was mentioned. For that, what should we do? That is where I think we should just redo our AI mission, our semiconductors mission, and our quantum technology mission, A lot of money is there. Let them bring it all together. Let there be a top council which is looking into this new world which is fragmenting, where the habit of collaboration is disappearing, and where today what you do can tomorrow be upset. So you should be ready for those eventualities. Thank you.
I think we're all out of time. But thank you, everyone, every one of my panelists. I think this was a very not enough time for this conversation, but a very insightful and meaningful discussion in any case. I look forward to speaking with each of you more and learning more about what you do. Thank you for your time today. Thank you to our audience.
It seems that both the Joint Secretary and the Additional Secretary seems to have been caught. Must be an important meeting on the US-India. I don't know. But we have an absolutely fabulous panel over here, which I think segues really nice. So the whole idea was essentially quite simple. It was sit down, have a chat with Arun Chabra, get a sense of what happened with ISET, segue to trust. And I'm not saying that trust is a natural successor of the ISET. I see trust publicly as a new product with some old ideas, but with some new. I'm going to start straight with Rob. Firstly, congratulations on Llama 4. We're very happy in India. We like open weights. We would prefer complete open source, but we do like open weights. But Rob, when it comes to the AI discussion between the US and India, and Tarun just said is that, look, there are 3 parts which we could do more on, right? AI, biopharma, nuclear. Semiconductors is a little mature, but we'll talk about it, John. Luckily, these are all the 3 things that we workshopped over the last 2 days. We're going to bake it into trust, and someone important is going to talk about it at Indrani's forum at the end of the month, hopefully, right? But the meta story with India and the Llama story with India seems to be very much a good natural story of US-India. Just give us a sense of what you think should happen from an AI infrastructure perspective to cement that even further.
Well, first of all, thank you for the conversation. I mean, it's been a fascinating day, and it feels like we are really at an inflection point in both the US-India relationship around tech, and then more generally the promise of this technology for all of us. So just really excited to be here. Minister Jaishankar mentioned this earlier today, the speech that Vice President Vance gave in Paris. And there he talked about the US wanting to be sort of the preferred trading partner for the world when it comes to AI. And he also said that it's really important for trust to be a part of those relationships. And so I think it's fitting that the framework that PM Modi and the President of the United States agreed to is called trust, and really focuses on what does it look like to have this kind of collaboration. And I think that, when I think about sort of what are the building blocks that are necessary for something like that to exist and for it to be good for the United States and good for India, I think there are a couple of pieces, some of which exist already and some of which we need to build. So the first is, of course, and this is, this piece is kind of long-standing between the US and India, is a robust developer ecosystem and a robust technical collaboration. So you mentioned Llama 4. We just released the newest version and most advanced Llama models ever this past weekend. And what we've seen is this sort of trend of building foundation models, open sourcing them so that people can build on top of them. And we already have, for example, we have a developer here in India that's taken Llama 3 and built an agriculture-specific